Thank you, everybody. Well, happy second day morning. We always joke that the second day of a conference is always just that little bit more mellower than the first day. So it's great to see so many of you here. Thank you for bringing so much energy. I'm really hoping you guys are going to enjoy this. This is going to be one exceptional panel. I'm joined by some absolute industry veterans, but I would also class them as legends and, dare I say, friends. So I'm really looking forward to this one. As always, I'll start by introducing myself. We'll go down the line. I'll let the gentlemen introduce themselves, and then I will start firing some hopefully very interesting questions at them. I'm Cal Evans. If you didn't get a chance to see me speak yesterday, I'm an international lawyer. I'm the managing associate of Gresham International. I've been working in this field for a number of years now. Outside of doing legal stuff, I speak, I write. I wrote the Little Book of Crypto back in 2019, and I also try and do a lot of things to help push this industry forward as a believer and a lover of all things Web3 and blockchain. I'm going to start with Tone, and I'll let the chaps introduce themselves.
Hey everyone, my name is Tone Vays. I come from the traditional Wall Street environment. I have a master's degree in financial engineering, worked on a quant team building risk models, companies like Bear Stearns. Then I was there during their collapse, JP Morgan, MSCI, and a few other companies. Left the corporate Wall Street world to be a trader in early 2015. But around that time, I already had a big interest in the world of Bitcoin. I started writing articles, started doing some public speaking because I used to be a teacher and a college professor, so I really like educating. And when I no longer had a boss, started traveling, speaking at conferences, trading, started teaching workshops on trading and investing. Today, I personally do a little less trading and more organizing events. And continue to maintain my YouTube channel with financial videos, Bitcoin education videos, and even used to run a legal show for Bitcoin.
Kevin Soltani, thanks for being with us. Super loud, no?
Yeah.
Thanks for being with us. GIMA Group, based out of Orange County, California, and Dubai for the last 6-7 years. We've primarily focused on alternative investments, obviously blockchain and digital assets, but gaming and esports. We were the second company to ever list esports company on the London Stock Exchange during COVID. It was a big success during a really tough time. Obviously, gaming had a hype. We were also the first company to do anything legally binding contractually for Web3 gamers. We took them out of the basement and we gave them esports professional home. And for the purposes of maybe not this conference, we also do work in edutech. We have a large AI robotics company focusing on edutech. We have a small little robot called Royby Robot, and we've just entered the digital worlds. I don't call it the metaverse anymore, but immersive environments to teach education to the youth.
Good morning. My name is Matthias Mende. I'm the co-founder of the Dubai Blockchain Center. It's inaugurated by the ruler of Dubai in 2018. One of the roles of the Blockchain Center was to educate other government sectors about cryptocurrencies and blockchain, and of course to build out the ecosystem of the UAE. So this is role number one, and my passion is my project, which I'm building right now. It's called Bonuz. It's a real-world gamification ecosystem, but also it has its own digital identity system, but it's like decentralized. So it's like on the light side, on the Jedi side of the digital identities which are coming of the future, and I'm sure we will talk a lot about this because this is a part of the CBDC subject today. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, gentlemen. So CBDCs and cross-border payments. I would argue this is maybe one legacy interest meets. I'm assuming that's a fire alarm?
May I have your attention, please?
What'd you do, Cal?
They knew what we were going to talk about.
What'd you do?
They know.
Are we good? Do we have to
They're
evacuate?
cutting us short.
The Matrix doesn't
Wait.
want us to talk this subject.
The floor's still cold. We've got time. So we're good. So, okay. Now, CBDCs, cross-border payments, I would say one of those is a legacy set, and one of those is a new age technology set. Now, Tone, you worked in TradFi before you moved over to the new world. I know a lot of us equally have that experience. What I'd love to hear is give me a good solid snapshot on which of the two, or where in the two your feelings lie based on them as a technology set. Because it's easy to say, oh, well, you know, a lot of crypto came out of cross-border payments, and then cross-border payments evolved in CBDCs. But I'd love to hear what you guys think about how, to put this another way, those two technology sets interact with each other. So, Tone, I'll kick off with you.
Sure. So let's start with what are CBDCs? And a lot of people think of it as something new. The whole world is full of CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. The US dollar, the euro, Japanese yen, they are all central bank digital currencies, okay? Even the dollar, which has the biggest cash component, even though here in the UAE, you guys do like physical cash as well. Most of it is still digital already. So we already have central bank digital currencies. So what we're really talking about here is the elimination of paper money. And for the government, there's actually two main causes as to why they would want to eliminate the paper dollar component. And whether they have to create a whole new currency or they leave the current one and just get rid of the dollars, or they get rid of the physical component, it's the same. The end result's the same. And the two main components are, and I'm going to be a little American-focused here and European, Western-focused, is one is the obvious one. They want full control and full surveillance of every transaction, mostly in order to capture tax revenue at the front end. Now, their current technology will make it very, very hard. So that's why they may need to launch a brand new digital currency only to have that kind of technology embedded, because the current digital technology behind the current central bank digital currency is 1970s and 1980s, and it's just not there. But the two leading reasons as to why they want it is they want to watch every transaction. They want to be able to censor every transaction. Like in Canada, for example, where they were able to shut down people's bank accounts because they donated $20 to a cause the government did not appreciate. That's reason number one. And reason number two is a little bit more hidden. And that is right now, and I'm going to be US-centric, the private sector and private banks are responsible for money creation. You go to buy a house, the bank creates the money. Even the government technically can't create money. They have to borrow it from the central bank and then pay it back with interest, which we can debate is good or bad. But right now, the money creation part takes place at the private bank level. And the government wants more control of that. So this is another way of more control for the government and eliminating the private bank sector from money creation. Now, I'm going to go ahead and leave it here, and we can maybe bring up how Bitcoin does this, but in a private way. But I'll let other panelists comment on anything else.
Thank you, Tone.
So if you want to continue about like the tech stack, so we'll talk about maybe the cross-border, right? The interoperability side. I like what you said, it's already digital, right? So it's already interoperable in some ways. Now, what are these BRIC countries going to do with their new currency? I tend to say good luck. Let's see how the thesis plays out. But if you're going to try to get, like the UAE has a very large exchange, the UAE exchange. They even use the Ripple technology, right? And so that's been, what, 4 years now? That doesn't communicate outside of fiat currency currently. So we have to add in a digital form of what are they going to do with their e-dollar or e-dirham or whatever. Is it going to be the same form of a fiat, just now taken in a full digital form without any fiat component ever again? Or is it going to be, truly, blockchain? Because then we're talking about decentralization, and I tend to think that can't exist at a government level with currency. If we can argue about that, but I think Lieberland was trying something like that, and we'll see how it goes. But as a fully decentralized country with a decentralized form of payment to communicate with a centralized form of payment through Forex transactions, we're still really far removed, and the tech is just not there. But arguably, it is there. Regulations aren't there to be able to implement the different conversations, one speaking literally Chinese and the other one speaking Russian, but money doesn't speak that language. Money speaks the language of money. So what is the CBDC going to do to impact that language? Is it going to be a new language? Are we going to have to relearn things? I tend not to think it's going to be like that, and tend to be what Tone said about peer surveillance. So when you compare, we did this yesterday on the panel, it's going to look very East versus West. That's why he said 3 times, look, I have to take the West perspective, same with me. But if you talk about the UAE, Middle East, Eastern perspective, it looks a whole lot different. It may not be negative. It may be positive in some ways for subsidies.
Right, pure, hard surveillance could be used for good. It could also be used for bad.
Yeah.
In 330 million people, right, you know what you're going to get. You're trying to track everything. With 3 million people, with mostly expats, with a really fastly growing economy, it might be used for positive. We might be able to get subsidies out of it, some type of, obviously, the government services, but maybe it could be a good thesis out of it. So it's going to look very East versus West.
Exactly. And one of the things as well, just jumping in, that we often forget is some countries don't even leverage an income tax. And so when we focus from a US base, we think, oh, they want to tax us. But some countries are just thinking, well, we don't have to. So then maybe it becomes a pure surveillance piece. Like, well, let's monitor these. Matthias, I'm keen to hear your input on this as well.
Sure. I was adding something to it. So currently, there are 114 countries exploring CBDCs. 11 already implemented pilots, and more than 20 they are about to implement the pilots. So the thing with CBDCs is, ultimately, as Tone said, they will be there to really control people. Of course, they'll remove all the papers and stuff, but everything will be probably in the bad government-leaded countries. That's sorry to say, but Europe, I think it will be fall under control. The European Central Bank, some of the governors, they set it themselves to control what people spend, buy, and all those things. So, and in some sides it's really good, but in some other sides it will definitely limit a lot of humans. Maybe it will create some more order and less chaos, but ultimately I really I hope some big nation makes their CBDC somehow so strong that it becomes the strongest and most free, or let's call it decentralized CBDC, but I don't even know if that's exactly possible, because even the CBDCs, they need to be pegged to something, and we saw already in the US with the US dollar once this stopped in the 70s.
72.
Yeah, the technology is pretty old.
Yeah.
So there was no technology even back then. They pegged gold to the dollar, and the gold was supposed to be in the bank. And then one day there was this president from France, and he wanted to change US dollar, and he drove with a ship to the States, and he couldn't get the dollar here to make, the gold. And he brought the gold back.
Right, but that was even earlier than that. So right now, the most popular form of payment is credit cards. And credit cards were created, again, in the 70s. They became popular in the 80s. And they were never built for the internet. It is a very inefficient way to pay for things on the internet. It's absolutely terrible. And so the technology definitely needs to evolve. But what you said earlier about no government will ever be able to make a decentralized form of payment. Before the current technology age, the paper money that we all used, again, whether it was backed by gold, not backed by gold, the United States dollar was created to be backed by gold. The Chinese paper money, and Chinese started using paper money long before anyone else. They were never really backed by gold. And so that was more of a decentralized payment because the government didn't have the technology. But now, it's impossible for anyone to create a decentralized payment. Only Bitcoin creates that decentralized payment component. And I think Bitcoin is going to give the countries that want more control or full surveillance state of payments a lot of problems. And this is where the Middle East, like here in the UAE, has a huge advantage because this country was built on financial freedom. And it's completely different than how the West, Europe and America and Australia, now thinks about people's money. So I think a country like the UAE would be very open to Bitcoin and other decentralized form of payment, where in the West, it's they're going to be very adversarial, and we'll see what wins. I tend to believe freedom always wins. So I still think Bitcoin has a bright future to challenge any central bank digital currency.
I think we have to do something here, chaps. I think we have to distinguish the concept of decentralized from a technology standpoint to a mentality standpoint. And what I mean by that is, I would argue that finance used to be decentralized years ago. And let me give an example. We've all seen those US Western movies where a guy walks into a bar and he says, I need a room, I need you to feed my horse, and I'm going to stay here for 3 nights, and he throws a bag of coins at him. And there's no conversation, they just know that's enough. And people used to be free in their negotiation. If you look at how Chips and Venice used to trade, and there used to be actual pure decentralization. You'd have freedom of economics between two people. So when we talk about this decentralized nature, we need to focus on 2 things, right? The mentality and the technology. So yes, CBDCs, focus staying in the lane, give us a tech set which maybe removes that decentralization. But the mentality is a very different thing. So let's switch onto a topic which is actually very hot. Let's talk about how the shift in the technology, both in a mentality and a technology, will move us from reliance on things like the US dollar. Because if we think now, a lot of countries place reliance on the US dollar, and we know BRICS and other organizations are trying to move away from that. But if there is this shift to CBDCs, how will that impact reliance on legacy currencies like the US dollar? Yeah, Matthias, or Kevin, who wants to jump in first?
The 2 US dollar guys?
We're all going to be emotional about this stuff.
I just spoke, so I'll go last. I'll let these guys have at it.
Look, the pressure downside, again, the East versus West is a different animal. You know, people tend to forget, of course, #1 economy, blah, blah. I'm not going to be the pro-US guy. It's just fact that the size of Los Angeles, where I live, in California, is the 8th largest economy in the world if you were to make it a country. So people tend to forget how big the system is. And people tend to forget how small other currencies are compared to it. So something like the yuan is less used than the Swiss franc, right? So I think people tend to forget that. So when the BRICS want to do their thing, they really have an upward hill to climb. So they might only have the decision of something like a new digital currency to do it together, so they can hold hands and create a passport system or whatever. Is that going to put downside pressure on the US dollar? Absolutely not, because you still have to settle. Yeah. And what are you settling in? 99% of the countries will choose to settle in dollar. That's going to take a massive amount of time to go back. You mentioned the credit system, right? We're 50 years removed from the creation of credit. It was a failed thesis, right? There's not much going on there. Cash before it, even worse, right? There's going to be problems in the first iterations of CBDCs, or whatever they're going to call it, but it's not, to answer your question, I don't see in the short term, in our lifetimes, in our business lifetimes, which is only 20, 30 years left, you're not going to see a flippening of the US dollar, unless a world war that, you know, truly impacts the world in a massive shift like it did for the UK in World War II, right? Like they just flipped. So I tend to see it as not all negative. For the East, I see it very negative for the West in the surveillance thought. But is it either way going to put downside pressure on the dollar, on the name dollar? No, it's just going to be a digital dollar. It'll be an e-dollar. The debt we owe to other countries, if they don't want it in the digital form, they're not going to get it in physical form ever again. Yeah. So take this if you want, you know, it's if then that.
Yeah, these points, like,
But I'm interested to know, like, because we're the American, we keep saying USD.
I'm gonna be a little.
But where's
I'm
the
gonna
EU
be a
side?
little different on your view, but Matthias, you wanna go?
Well,
Because we keep saying US. I want to know, like, what's the European side? Because you guys are, is socialism, like, closer to the CBDC?
Europeans have outsourced all thinking and all decisions to the US. I have not seen anything coming out of Europe that hasn't been sent over to America, checked, double stamped, corrected, sent back for the Europeans to publicly state.
yes.
So I honestly don't think any decisions out of Europe matter anymore. The United States is driving everything in Western thinking.
I totally agree, and we totally see it nowadays in other political problems and wars, with the humans who they demonstrate for, and then who the leaders of the country, what they talk on the screen. So, yeah, the US seems to be the boss, but the question is for how long more, you know? But still, regarding the Bitcoin stuff, what you were saying in terms of decentralization, the best scenario which we would have for a free world is if Bitcoin becomes even more stronger and that more countries actually adapt it, and that then the users who have truly decentralized wallets, that they are just accepted everywhere and they can leverage against the CBDCs with Bitcoins. So they actually would have a free currency. It could be the free currency of the world because it's also really the most decentralized.
The thing is, see, like, the reason why I said, like, Europe, and I'm interested in that, and I agree with everything, but, you know, socialism is so much closer to understanding something like CBDCs and the impact to the economy opposite to, like, capitalism. And that's what I mean East versus West, is because in capitalism, you know, it just feels like surveillance. In socialism, it feels like just another tool. And if you're going to do, you know, government subsidies only out of CBDCs, well, you could flip it tomorrow in Paris.
I have mixed emotions about this, actually. Let me give my 2 cents on this, because as somebody who's lived in Europe and the US, I was amazed when I moved to the US by the US tax system, because the US tax system is overarching, but it very much has a policy of ask for forgiveness and permission. It's very bizarre, because coming from the UK, where taxes were just taken at source and I just got a statement at the end of every year, like a lot of countries do, I was, oh, okay, there we go, I've paid my tax, and I never heard anything from the tax office unless there was a major issue. But then I moved to the United States, and every year there's that joke, right? There's those memes online, like, oh, yeah, you owe us taxes. Well, how much? Well, we're not going to tell you. Okay, but if I get it wrong, do I go to jail? Yes. Like, there's no assistance there. And so this is what amazes me when you see this compare and contrast, because the concept of CBDCs arguably gets rid of things like tax returns. It arguably gets rid of things like money laundering, because these are things that are controlled at source. It doesn't matter anymore if you go to open a bank account. You don't need a bank account because that dies, right? You just need your wallet. And if you can't ID where that income came from, they just pause everything, like we saw in Canada, as Tone said, right?
Right.
So let's swing this conversation into.
Oh, let me just comment real quick on what was initially said. But yeah, I've done like discussions over money laundering. Personally, I think the concept of money laundering is immoral. It's your money. You should be able to spend it in any way that you like. You earned it. And if you are earning this money in an illegal way, then government criminal resources need to stop the illegal activity that you're doing to earn that money, and not start confiscating money under suspicion of how you earned it. So I have a whole problem with the entire concept of money laundering.
If I could jump in there, by the way, if you've ever doubt what Tone says there is a tick box on an IRS tax return form and a note that says, remember to report your illegally gained earnings.
Correct, yeah. And I just want to comment real quick. I do think that the United States dominance as the world reserve currency is going to end by the end of this decade. But going back to how it happens, it doesn't actually matter whether your currency is backed by gold or not. Even 1,000 years ago, countries that would put more gold into their coins were still not as valuable as the Roman coins because the Roman coins were more trusted. The only reason why the United States still maintains superiority as the #1 currency is global confidence in the United States. And that confidence comes in 3 ways, and we're witnessing all 3 deteriorate in real time. We're talking about political stability, the military, and the transparency of the economic system. Those are the 3 things that make your countries, that create trust in your country with the world, right? The US is the most transparent, and it has been, the global leader. But we're witnessing all 3 deteriorate. Even in the United States, people do not believe that the last election was fair. We are witnessing crazy things they are doing with their economic policies. And we are witnessing countries all around the world no longer being scared of the American military. These are the 3 things that will make people lose faith in American dollar as the world reserve currency. Now, what is going to replace it? We don't know. I mean, the world does not have the same trust in, say, China. Transparency is not there. Their political system is very different. They don't have democratic elections like the US. Now, that could be good or bad. There are several countries that people are dying to move to. We're speaking in one of them right now that do not have democratic elections. So just because your country doesn't have a democratic election doesn't mean that it's bad by any means if the country is properly run. Could be a very good thing. But we're so used to having it the other way around. Usually when there's no elections, it tends to be very tyrannical and turns into communism. Not here at all. So it's good here, bad in other places. So Russia, same thing. They're currently, people do not trust them. India, people are just starting to warm up to them. But as the BRICS and as these countries show their more transparency in their financial system, more, I guess, professionalism in diplomacy, in brokering peace deals around the world, and as they show that they have the military to protect the smaller countries around them, that's when the shift will happen. It's not about how much debt you have or how much money you owe. It's about global confidence in your country or in a group of countries. If the BRICS were to say, have a BRICS currency, it doesn't matter if it's backed by gold or not. That's almost irrelevant. It's whether the world trusts and respects them to be honest and benefit the world versus take advantage of the world.
Absolutely.
Well, look, I totally agree. The one thing I was pointing to is financially, the markets, right? Which BlackRock, Bear Stearns, Goldman Sachs, these names, well, no more Bear Stearns, but these names that quite literally run the world, and those names of BRIC economies, they have large, investments, not only on the ground, but I'm sure politically. I was looking purely, and you nailed 2 of the 3, but I disagree on transparency. I don't think we can ever flip that unless it's an us versus them, right? And that's how it's always going to be. The West still will have allies after all of this, but it goes back to, I don't care about politically, it's like transparency. The financial markets being as healthy as they are compared to the volumes, the liquidity.
Well, let's talk about transparency real quick. I know a lot of people in my own space in the Bitcoin world, everyone hates the fact that Bitcoin is so transparent. Mm-hmm. Oh, it needs privacy. People should be switching to Monero, which is private. Mm-hmm. But transparency in Bitcoin, being able to trace every Bitcoin transaction, could be a huge positive for a country. If a big country, it needs to be a big country. It's not going to be El Salvador. I'm sorry, El Salvador is not going to be the world, the world leader. They're just too small, and they're not going to have the military. But a big country, and I'm not expecting it from China, but maybe India, maybe a Brazil, if they openly adopt Bitcoin, and they can say, look at the transparency. You can see down to the Satoshi, down to the last dollar, of where all our government money is going. Mm-hmm. So a country adopting something like Bitcoin and showing the world they can be transparent, and it's hard to bribe a politician because of all the Bitcoin's transparency, that could be used as a huge positive to be the country that leads the world into a better future.
Yeah. We also have
Mic drop.
we also have the issue that we, from being from Europe and the US, take for granted, in that there are a huge number of countries that do things in two currencies. And for us, we go into a store and we see a price and we think, great, that's in dollars, that's in euros. But if you go to certain countries in Latin America or in Africa, you've got three currencies to choose from. So the concept for them of being able to buy something in Bitcoin or their local currency isn't foreign to them. But in that vein, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this, because we've spoken a lot about control, we've spoken a lot about money laundering and bribery. Do we think CBDCs and a legacy like a Bitcoin or something can exist together? Or do we think CBDCs will just attempt to completely stamp out what we know to be other alternatives, Bitcoin, ETH, anything like this? Do we think it's going to steal the technology and run with it? Or do we think they'll exist in tandem?
I personally believe they can exist together. Again, as Tone said, it depends on the leaders and the decision makers, what they choose. Mm-hmm. But the same way we wrap Bitcoin on the Ethereum network, the same way perhaps they can wrap the Bitcoin and stake it in the CBDC network on whichever chain the CBDC is running, because that's also another technical issue. And I see one of the biggest issues is actually the quantum resistance, which we don't even know if it's safe yet or not, because the quantum war not came yet, and it will come. And perhaps then all the SHA-256 encryption, it will just be opened already. We don't know that, so it's really so hard to say, but everything is to come. But I personally, to answer the answer, yes, I believe they can coexist together, and there will be ways, and there are already different options being proposed, so depends really on the leaders. But if Bitcoin becomes one of the reserve currencies, mm-hmm. or a part of it, of the collateral which is held by the country, by their central banks, I think it will be incredible for the free world also. Depends of how much they're holding, because BlackRock, they have so much money, they could technically just buy all the Bitcoins in the world. The price might inflate up big time, because I think 19.5 of 21 million are already mined, mm-hmm. but will still continue mining till the year 2140. But I think it's possible. I mean, there's a big vision behind it of Satoshi, and it would be a nice combination.
Yeah. Kevin?
Look, I think they will coexist because there's two different communities currently, well, not a CBDC community, but that might be forced. It could be you can only pay for, in the US, Visa or DMV services with this. All government services are now only used in CBDC. I don't know. I don't know what that's going to look like. That's not going to totally take out Bitcoin or cryptos unless the legislation, which is the only major stop, right? Tomorrow, if they say crypto is banned in America, Bitcoin, that's never going to happen at its current rate. You have a BlackRock ETF that's arguably been approved, not going to start trading till next year, yet we're worried about this price run-up, and no one's talking about it being priced in. So no one's talking about the CBDCs being priced into the economy and why they're printing so much and so quickly in the latter stages of their last bullets in their gun. So I tend to agree that in 2030, I don't even know if Bitcoin's going to be the winner. You mentioned quantum. What if a quantum came in, quantum resisted, crypto came in and was able to flip Bitcoin that was better than Bitcoin? I'm okay with that, right? And we don't know what we don't know. And that's the thing about, I'm the biggest maxi of my friends, not on this panel by any means, but my point is that we don't know what we don't know. Yeah. If a true world war breaks out, like a true, real one, not proxy wars, we don't know what Bitcoin and crypto can do out of it. It was birthed out of a financial crisis, but can it survive a real one, right? Can it survive a full, these are arguments that we've gone over for the last 6 years. but the priced-in ETF. When BlackRock picks up the phone to their clients, they don't ask, hey, what's the product? They say, we have a new product. So great, give me 100 million. Great, give me 200 million. So we can get our market cap back very quickly, and it's being priced in. So how about if CBDCs have been priced into the economy already? How much money have they printed in the last 3 years, knowing something is coming or not? Again, I don't know. Just, this is getting real conspiracy theorists, but you can't not talk about these things and talk about a central bank anything.
Yep. Tone?
Yeah, no, I'm personally pretty comfortable with Bitcoin being lasting into the future. I've actually never held any other token other than Bitcoin. I've never had the desire to. I stuck with the most decentralized one that I believed in, and I understand its underlying technology. Quick comment on, final comment on transparency. People would be a lot more comfortable paying their taxes if they can just allocate them the way you allocate your 401k allocation. Like, hey, you know what? I want my taxes to go to education. I want my taxes to go to building a bridge.
Yep.
And we have the technology right now to do that with transparency, being Bitcoin. You can just allocate them, and then government will see whether people really want to fund these wars or not. Now, can Bitcoin and a government central bank digital currency coexist? Not only can they coexist, they need to coexist for a brighter future for everyone. So here's an example. Let's say a country wants to go fully digital, but the leaders of those countries are not, I'm not going to name names, but don't have a totalitarian, I want to control everything mindset. And they want to give their people some freedom. The people in the private sector, which should be the majority of your country, let's say only 10 to 20% of your country should be government employees. The rest of your country needs to be the private sector, which is, again, another reason why everyone wants to come here to the UAE, because it achieves that very, very well. But that's not the case in the West anymore. So the private sector is free to use Bitcoin that nobody controls. It's a currency. You can use it for savings as well. Hopefully, it'll be a little more stable. And it will be more stable once there's more value on the chain. The government employees get paid in government's central bank digital currency. As that economy grows, obviously, there needs to be a little bit of an elastic supply. Like, I'm not a crazy hard money advocate. There are lots of problems. There were lots of problems under the gold standard also. There needs to be some mechanism to insert more liquidity into the economy, but actual mechanism to remove liquidity from the economy as well, and it needs to be more natural. So the government is paying their employees in government currency, and they need to be very responsible because it's less than 20% of their economy. So if they start printing too much of this digital money, and they start paying these employees unreasonable wages, and those employees are losing confidence in that government money, they will instantly convert it for Bitcoin. And you will see how that government currency just goes into hyperinflation, but it's not going to affect the economy of the country because the economy of the country is ran 80-90% on Bitcoin, which cannot hyperinflate because of its finite supply. So this forces the government to keep a proper balance and not go crazy into debt and government printing, because then there are lots of problems. On the flip side, if the economy is growing really quickly and like Bitcoin is hard to get a hold of, there's this 20% of the economy, and then that currency can certainly be, more liquidity can be created when it's needed. And it can assist the other 80% of the economy that's on like a Bitcoin standard, for example. So having them exist together with the one that the government cannot control, being Bitcoin, being the dominant one, is the best future, I think, economically for society.
Okay, very cool. So we're all kind of arguing not only could, but they should exist together, which is interesting. So we've got 5 minutes left, give or take some change. Just as a final thought to give something to cross-border payments. do we think, knowing how the foreign exchange market works, that's arguably some kind of, or has often been a benchmark or comparison to crypto, do we think CBDCs kill the foreign exchange market? Do we think it just doesn't exist anymore? Because we're able to transact more freely, we're able to transact more directly, we're able to just take our currencies directly, or do we think it actually evolves the cross-border payments market and takes it into a Web3, Web4 version?
So be the shortest answer. I think it'll replace a lot of our current problems by a lot of new problems, and the new problems will take just as long to solve because you won't be able to get somebody on the phone.
Yeah. Yep.
There's a lot of cash society still. Third world countries still are working in cash. A lot of them don't have a proper credit system, right? People tend to forget a lot of Latin American, a lot of African countries, some Middle Eastern countries, some of the biggest economies in the world. I know Iran is a closed state, but they have a zero credit system in the country, but it's the 18th largest economy in the world. Are they going to leapfrog the idea of credit paper from Forex exchange? Because they don't communicate with anybody in the world. A lot of countries still don't communicate with each other. Are they going to leapfrog that and go straight into Web3 money, CBDCs, however that communication looks? Or is it just going to convert the current form of you walk into a Forex and there's some physical and there's now no physical, and it's just a digital form in a physical manner? So I tend to think that that'll happen because we still like to, COVID taught us that we're not going to do anything remote. Yeah. And so I don't think in the decade coming that everything will be fully digital in the Web3 thing. I'm a big Web3 component, but what is Web3 right now? What are we actually using Web3? What did you do today that was so Web3, right? But you used a lot of Web4. There's AI working right now in this room, right all around us. So are we going to leapfrog these type of things? And that could happen with currency.
Sure.
I think the trade will continue, and there will be just new CBDC kind of products for trading of the national CBDCs of each countries. Perhaps there's a BRICS one, we don't know, but
well, let me ask you this question.
Real quick, the solution to the cross-border payment problem, again, is something like Bitcoin, which nobody controls. Removing the current system with the government CBDC system, it's still 180 governments around the world. So again, you're just replacing some middleman by other middleman, and you're not actually you're making it maybe easier, but you're going to create all new problems because the real problem is still there, which is a middleman.
Yeah. Well, with 2 minutes left, I won't go down a complex question of things like how would you benchmark those CBDCs together if there's no underlying tangibility, because as you astutely pointed out, the gold story is how we used to actually benchmark currencies together, but that doesn't exist anymore, so now we have to use a very complex economic method. But chaps, I'd love to give you each 30 seconds just to make some closing remarks, because I think it's always good to finish out on something. We've got 2 minutes left, so Matthias, give us your closing 30-second remarks on these topics, bud.
Well, if it comes to CBDCs and the stuff which we talk about, I think to be very safe as a human, it's good to get more education on self-custody, on decentralized wallets, on how to buy Bitcoin, or how to hold it, to have a plan B emergency solution. I don't believe really in any government other than the UAE government, so I think we are kind of safe here, but everywhere in the world I would try to secure myself and learn about self-custody and just have Bitcoin somewhere in a ledger on the side, and let's see what happens.
Awesome.
For the purpose of this conversation, I'll keep other cryptos out of it. CBDCs are coming. They're going to be implemented in many of our countries in this room. We're not all from the UAE, America, otherwise. It is coming. Learn how to figure a way to get involved, use it. If it's in its first stage where it's not going to be a marketplace or transactable and it's going to be something like a subsidy usage or services for government, fine. But when it gets to a marketplace, transactional area, what are you going to do about it? Are you prepared to do anything with it? And what's your strategy there? So at least educate yourself and be prepared, because they are coming. And so I tend to try to stay positive and say, what's it going to do for me, not against me?
Yeah, CBDCs are definitely coming. Now, if they were coming mostly due to good intentions of making people's lives easier in making payments, Bitcoin would be in trouble. But the main reason why they're coming is to make people's lives more challenging when it comes to regulation and surveillance and control by the creators of those CBDCs. And this is why I could not be more bullish on Bitcoin as a way to balance out the real driver of CBDCs.
Mm-hmm. Gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for being here. Before I close this out, I think the underlying tone was education, learn about it, make sure you find something out. To that vein, all of these guys have fantastic social medias. Make sure you take the time to follow them. Some of them educate on some fantastic things. So make sure that you take the time, and also make sure you take the time to follow WBS as well and start tagging some things. The content could be a little bit up over day one, so let's try and encourage that for day two. But thank you so much for joining me on stage, chaps. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you've all enjoyed this. Let's give our panel a huge round of applause.